So the topic of this panel is growth areas and challenges in AI platforms. I think we have a great cast of people here to talk about them. I'll probably ask very quickly for you to introduce your name, your role, and maybe a book that you're reading right now. Let's get some book recommendations out for folks. Go ahead, Zai, go ahead. I think they're so polite, they don't want to introduce anybody. So, Ramesh, why don't we start?
I think we'll start here. Go ahead.
I am Tassar. I have worked in AI in a couple of different companies, including VMware, Amazon Web Services, and Facebook. And one of the books which I'm reading right now, which I really love, is a book from Jack Welch, Straight from Gut.
Andrei?
So my name is Andrei. I work in AI for 10 years after my PhD from the University of Manchester. I work in Google, Apple, Walmart Labs, and currently I'm Senior Director of eBay and Search Science team. And book I'm reading now related to AI, there is a very good book from Synthesis series. Synthesis series is about applying deep learning and neural networks for natural language problems.
Ramesh?
Hello, I'm Ramesh Raskar, faculty at MIT, and I'm very passionate about how we can use computing and software to solve the world's problems. I think when it comes to books, I have been in an era where I buy books and don't really read them. How many of you are in that situation? You buy books? Okay, so I think we are beyond the books phenomena. We love Amazon. And I stopped reading books, and what I realized actually is that you can, take Steve Pinker's latest book, right? Enlightenment. It's a thick book. I realized I'm going to buy it but never read it. But if you just watch Steve Pinker's few talks, actually it covers all the key bullets from that book. So if you watch 2 or 3 talks of Steve Pinker, you're all set. So just watch talks, don't buy the books.
Thank you for that great tip, and it's I think a very practical and time-saving tip. I think this is the best you're going to receive from any panel all day today, that one nugget that you got from Ramesh. Let's start some of our discussions. I think when we're talking about AI platforms, I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and build from the bottom up, which is how do you build AI solutions using the basic components like libraries, and then go talk about cloud solutions, and then talk about domain solutions, and maybe talk a little bit about the future. If you have some time, we would love to take questions at the end. So let's start. I'm probably going to start with Andrei, and I have a question for you, Andrei. As you are building, you're head of search at eBay, you're building a number of AI solutions. What's the role of libraries today? There's a bunch of libraries, MXNet, TensorFlow, PyTorch, new old ones like Caffe, Theano, and I believe you have some of your own framework. So can you just talk a little bit about the use cases in building AI solutions of when do you choose to use these libraries, when do you choose to build your own, a little bit of that discussion.
Yes, so basically if you take any big company with some applications, right, you can describe a set of problems for machine learning in sort of as a matrix, right? On vertical scale is how you're close to your final solution. So let's take just, for example, eBay or any search site when we have users coming and searching and buying items. And then if the user searching for this, and the input, you have input data which comes. It can be data about products or previous behavior data of users or anything else. So you have this vertical scales from incoming data to outcoming data. And on horizontal scale, you have very different approaches how to solve business problems of your company, right? And currently we have many artificial intelligence libraries you can sell, or machine learning libraries, or many other parts of this area, depends how you define this. And they're addressing certain part of this stack. And typically, if you consider mature libraries like TensorFlow or PyTorch, for their particular problems, they are pretty good, pretty well developed, but they take only part of this whole landscape solution of application AI for your company problems. And typically, not only those libraries, there are many libraries like FastText, many different, right? And typically, your problem, how to use AI to make business gains for your company. And of course, it happens that, some libraries, let's say TensorFlow or PyTorch, you can discuss good for some part of this stack, but they're not good for other part of this landscape. And certainly every mature company does not use any big solution which is available as whole solution to solve everything. You always have to put these libraries inside your business. They can replace some certain funding, some machine learning or algorithms or tuning some parameters. And certainly every big company builds own libraries. And certainly any big library use many of these libraries. And as I put it, like when you build this library, how do you build them?
Yep.
In some cases, you pretty well know. Let's say, assume we want to do entity extraction from natural language, right? Text, which can be like in case of search company, can be both documents and queries. In some cases, you can have very well-defined task and work on building this library to used by many teams. But in most cases, it happens that some product-oriented teams build their solutions built for, like, assume we want to extract entities from documents about products, and someone builds this, right? And then we recognize that many other teams want to use this. And basically, this problem is how to take existing solution and make it a library used inside company. But what I want to say to summarize, so basically, both of these processes are going on in any mature company, using big external libraries, which are very good typically in what they do, but frequently they're not enough to do other parts of this, other horizontal or vertical scale. Sometimes you need to tune them for your hardware. You have some specialized hardware, and you have to work how to make this library working for this hardware, because in such companies you save hundreds of millions of dollars making library more efficient, more memory efficient, running on special type of hardware to keep memory. So both processes are going on in such companies, using and writing on.
Okay, that's a fantastic perspective. I think the idea that there is, I think, a whole class of entrepreneurship opportunities around building tools and tooling for AI. From a research perspective, Ramesh, when you are doing your work at MIT Media Labs, when you're thinking about new architectures, new ways to solve problems, how do you go about doing some of these? Because there's probably some push and pull between, should I use something that's already built and build on that, or should I build something from scratch and do some innovation?
Yeah, no, I think Andrei already covered a lot of those concepts of how they go together. But I want, especially those of you who are starting out in the field, to not be corrupted like people like us on the stage, because when we were growing up, learning about programming, the analogy was always cooking. There are ingredients and there's processes and there's sequences, and that's how we put together. And then if you buy, instead of buying ingredients, vegetables, you can just buy, a bag of mixed frozen vegetables. That's your library, right? Everything comes together. But I want to kind of get away from that metaphor of cooking to start thinking more like raising a child, because ML and AI is more about raising a child and less like cooking. So I know this session is about platforms, but if you're starting out in the field now, I would actually train yourself, just have a mental model that's more like raising a child or training a dog than anything else. And when we talk about cooking, we think about all the layers, we think about the stack. But when you're raising a child, do you think about platforms? You don't think about that. You don't think about ingredients. You don't do most of the things. You say, if my child has to learn language, I'm just going to talk to the child. If I want the child to be even better at math, I'm going to hire a math tutor. And for my child to become stronger, I'm going to go to the park. And this is how you think about raising a child. And as we think about platforms, if you want to continue to use that word, is we're going to continue to go in that direction. So I'm partially answering your question on what it means to do platforms. But at the same time, all these big players are very eager for you to get addicted to their platform, right? Which is great, because they're doing great work, and if you're an entrepreneur, you can use their current platform. But as I said, if your mental model is not platforms, but more of a training, you'll probably snap out of it. I think Amit made a very good point about kind of prepare, design, train and deploy, and he had certain red areas there, which is, that's all the space Oracle is going to leave for you to innovate. But as much as we love Oracle, as much as we love all these great platforms, what's going to happen is the automated ML, automating on machine learning, is actually just going to take over all those four aspects of it. Yeah. Maybe not as much on the governance aspect of it, but all the other aspect of it. Yeah. So I encourage you to think of that mental model as opposed to pure platforms for now. But for right now, of course, platforms is the way to go.
And unfortunately, I think there is still the task of building that baby that you need to rear up. I think we are probably not at the spot where we can have we can pick synthetic intellects from off the shelf. There was this whole COTS movement at one point in time where you could pick pre-built components, whether it's fabrication of houses or aircraft or a number of those things. So I think your point is well taken, Ramesh. But I think we're just trying to figure out this intermediate time where we have to first build it,
Yes.
and then I think on an ongoing basis train it and manage also how do you, I think there's some challenges around how do you untrain a bad habit that an AI might pick up.
Right.
Lots of fascinating discussions there. I want to move a little bit to the cloud side of things, and I want to start with Tushar, and because you've had very broad experience at VMware as well as Amazon Web Services, and talk a little bit from a platform perspective. There's a lot of movement happening. There's a fierce, I think, competition between Google, Amazon, Azure, and I think a number of other companies.
Right,
How
and
do
the
you
way
see
I
that
look at it
playing out?
is, like all other aspects, compute, storage, databases, and analytics, AI has really picked up in the cloud. And if you look at it from the cloud perspective, there are three parts to it: infrastructure as a service in AI, platform as a service in AI, and software as a service in AI. On the infrastructure as a service on AI side, Google has certainly done a great job, especially with TPUs coming in, and certainly NVIDIA is the main competitor. If you look at the SaaS level, when you're looking at different companies having different solutions, you have automatic speech recognition, natural language processing, natural language understanding. All the three companies, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, have great products. It's the PaaS space where the battle is kind of getting won and lost, and that's where Google has really come up with TensorFlow. It's a great product, and Microsoft and Amazon have kind of joined hands. And if you look carefully, there are two kinds of frameworks that people typically use. One of those are imperative, other are symbolic frameworks, and one of them is more focused on speed, other is on speed of ease of use. And what they're doing now is trying to kind of combine these platforms into one, like glue, which will have both the components. That's how I see the industry emerging. I understand where Ramesh is coming from, which is, we're doing things from scratch, and AutoML coming in. But my viewpoint is it will take some time before it really reaches what we call the lingua franca, the masses. And in that particular period, people will be relying upon cloud-based AI solutions. That's the way I think things are going to emerge.
Fantastic, and I want to just have a little bit of a contrast from the world of Amazon and eBay from Amazon to eBay. Andrei, I believe you guys run your own data centers. Could you just talk us through some of the pros and cons of going to the cloud for deep learning and machine learning, where like large amounts of compute are required for training, versus doing it yourself, and maybe some of those perspectives?
Yes, there are many aspects to this problem, right? One of aspects which we have to take into account whenever you say about big AI for big business, that AI is very important part, but it's just part of the business. And each company has if you currently run your search services or your financial services and so on, they already run somewhere, right? For some companies they can be run on Amazon cloud, for some cloud, and some companies on Google cloud, and some companies run in their own data centers. And of course, your AI solutions, because it's heavily based on getting data from your current business processes or current consumer-oriented services, processing them, learning models, tuning, deploying data, it always will be embedded into current infrastructure, right? And this is one of the important dimensions when you decide do you want to run your AI in cloud or in your data centers. It should be very close from many points of view, close by network connections, close by storage, close by also software infrastructure and people, close to what you have already. So it will be always one dimension how you will decide where to run your AI solutions. And of course, there are other important problems. Once you go with AI to really large scale, so assume you want to develop, apply your AI solutions inside your search. And your search is, let's say you take 10,000 seconds queries per second, right? So optimization of your AI for some certain hardware platform will be crucial. It will go to hundreds of millions of dollars per company. And for this to be very important decision when you think where to run my AI. Do you want to run in this type of clouds, which will they provide certain hardware platforms which I want, or will not they provide? This one, and another important dimension. Then again, as we discussed, AI is not typically something ready you want to run, I want to run TensorFlow only. TensorFlow will be a big part of something which process incoming data for you, process like features, generate features, puts into this kind of model training, parameter tuning, but then again you have a lot of to go to your consumer-oriented services. So the problem is not only can I run TensorFlow or PyTorch on AWS, but can I run all other stuff here? It will be another big part of problem and will help to, it will be determining which decision will you take. So currently, yes, eBay we run most of stuff in our own data centers. It's a very good solution for us. Certainly there are some like weak points, like for example, if you would like to deploy our solutions into many different regions, like we want to have it close to, let's say, consumers in Texas, consumers in Seattle, consumers in New York, consumers in Singapore, let's say. And of course, AWS, for example, for that purpose has much better infrastructure. They deploy it around the world, so they have a lot of advantages. And so there are many of these dimensions which are important for you once you decide, should I run my AI in my own data centers or should I run in AWS or any other cloud?
And Ramesh, from your perspective, any advice for entrepreneurs who are starting out building, carrying on in the theme on how should they think about it? There is some concern about being completely on the cloud. There is privacy concerns as well. There is also the concern that a lot of these cloud providers are using the information of how services are being built on the cloud to build their own services and compete with you eventually. Any thoughts there, Ramesh?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's obvious that things like the Amazon Web Services have single-handedly changed the way entrepreneurs, people like us start companies. So and I think that will continue to happen even in the AI and the post-AI world. I think when it comes to special mechanisms for data leak, which is different than encryption or regulation, is going to be a very interesting battle. So some of the work we are doing at our team at MIT is thinking about how can we actually run very distributed. One of the points that Amit made and also Andrei you made is that this notion that data is actually distributed in various places. So it's not really a big data problem, it's actually a small data problem. And how do you access that? And some of the algorithms we have built allow you to train networks on very small amount of data without ever exchanging the data with a central server. So think about your Apple Watch, and you might have only 100 bytes or 1,000 bytes sitting on your watch or on your phone or some kind of an edge device, and you still want your centralized server to run and learn a very deep, very complex neural network model. How would it do that? And so we are doing a lot of work in this space, and the challenge, as I said in that case, is not just if you just directly encrypt and use traditional methods, then you have lost the ability to train. But what piece of that central code you send back to the watch or your thin client or your edge, so that it's still useful to manipulate? The analogy again is to think about children. How can I send my child to a school or the best school, and they learn something from it, come back? Or maybe a better example is an intern. Like my MIT student goes to a company, learns the best skills and comes back, but I never have to know, beyond the NDA wall what that company is actually doing. All I care about is that my student was well trained. And think about algorithms the same way. Can the algorithm be sent to train in some place and come back, but never expose that data back to me?
Yeah. That's fascinating. I always think about the proliferation of devices that we have. I wear a Fitbit to track my thing. My phone probably tracks my activity. And when you think about agents, and we'll have a great panel coming up on conversational agents, these agents potentially have the ability to learn more about the environment they are in, the types of questions they get, the types of accidents they have to deal with, and how do you use that central server, the device analogy of how do you combine these learnings in a safe, privacy-safe way. I think that's fascinating. And maybe we'll touch back on that topic, Ramesh, with you when we talk a little more about the future. I want to just take a small detour and talk a little bit about composing complicated AI solutions using higher level solutions. I think that's getting a lot of traction right now. You have higher level solutions for NLP, you have higher level solutions for vision. There's a lot of companies, there is Clarify, Matroid, and even Amazon has a lot of solutions there. Conceivably, you may not build any AI core service, but build an AI solution by comprising and composing this together. I would love to get some of your thoughts. Maybe we can start with Tushar on composing AI solutions using higher level services.
Right. So, friends, till 1 year back when we used to talk about software as a service in AI, we used to think about natural language processing, automatic speech recognition, we would think about translation. What I'm finding now is companies are moving even one layer above. And these, some of the fundamental SaaS platform services are kind of becoming a platform. So for example, our companies are thinking of developing a solution which you can deploy as it is for fraud detection in financial institutions. Or they're thinking about having a conversational agent, and remember, it's not just automatic speech recognition. It's something which is a combination of automatic speech recognition, natural language understanding, text to speech, everything being combined together and being provided to you. And the good news is, if you step back and think about it, the reason this is happening is, in order to break into the enterprise sector, you got to provide them solutions, not products. And those who have done enterprise sales know this. And when you talk about a solution, it can never be just one component. And that is kind of driving both the companies and the developers and the entrepreneurs to think in terms of solutions, which are a combination of number of existing AI SaaS solutions to provide that at a higher level. Hope that makes sense, Ashish,
I think that makes sense, and would love to get your perspective as well, Andrei. You're probably developing some of these higher level solutions like visual search and components. How do you see that evolving in terms of bringing new features out for people? Do you see yourself building higher level AI solutions using a number of these high level services? Do you still see a lot of work that needs to be done to make it happen? I think some perspective for entrepreneurs would be great.
Yeah, certainly. So we developed this, what you say, high-level services, like recently eBay launched product search based on visual, when you can make a picture of product and search for it, right? And it's interesting question, right? Because all these high-level services, when you go to large scale, there are many companies which will give you image similarity search. Typically, it's tuned, like there are many dimensions how to define if two images are similar or not, right? And as a company which are in product space, typically you care how close it will be causing higher conversion, right? If you say, is this item close to this item? Is it by shape? Is it by, let's say, like category? Is it by texture of image? Is it by colors? And there are many dimensions, right? And typically, you have to turn this AI service to really some business metrics of your company. And high-level services from outside, they rarely provide you this opportunity. So you have to frequently you have to develop your own service because it will be tuned in particular for your problems. Second, this high-level service should be tuned to high performance typically, right? If you want to have image service, you want to have answer, let's say, within 100 milliseconds, right? And typically many high-level services provided from outside, they're not tuned for very high performance. And you have to do it on your own. And of course, then certainly, frequently your service, you have to combine several high-level services inside. And I don't see now any good framework how to combine them, like how to make whole pipeline of high-level services. There is no such framework.
Yeah, I think so. That's I think an opportunity for entrepreneurs to think about as to how do you combine some of these things. Can you combine a visual search? Can you combine a natural language processing, a speech recognition, to build maybe a better fraud tool, or maybe to build a better prospecting tool or a sales tool? I think there's some interesting opportunities there. I actually want to switch a little bit to the future, because we've sort of traced this journey from the very basics, the bits and bytes, going to higher level services. And Ramesh, there is a lot of concern with AI and how things are moving and jobs and stuff. So from a platform's perspective, from technicians in this field, people who are working on this, I would love to get some of your future-looking perspective on where do you think this is going?
That's a very good point. I mean, the reason why kind of ML jobs even exist today are mainly because of data wrangling or experimentation or some domain expertise. And people in AI, people like us often like to talk about everybody else's well-being. Wow, are we going to replace the radiologists? And are we going to replace, certain types of, mundane jobs? But actually the biggest risk is AI will probably eliminate the AI jobs. Because the things that we are very proud of, data wrangling, experimentation, and so on, are actually not that difficult. You remember when you had to set up your Wi-Fi router And you have to have, almost a computer science, degree to figure out should be WPA2 or W. You have to like choose all these options. And one day they realize, it doesn't really matter. You type your password and it's going to check across all the possibilities and just connect you to the Wi-Fi. So AutoML is pretty much like that. You don't need to, call your cousin who has a, technology background to set up your Wi-Fi router anymore. It's the same thing with AutoML. Most of the data wrangling, most of the experimentation that we're talking about are actually not that complicated. Some of the work we are doing in our lab at MIT is we have shown that if you're doing this search, another analogy I want to give very quickly is like MATLAB, right? Like if you're just solving Ax equal to B, you just say B equals, X equals A backslash B. And the backslash operator in MATLAB, if you look at the code underneath, it's very smart. It looks at all the possibilities, all the things you learned in linear algebra growing up. They're all kind of hidden underneath, and it has all these case statements that says if the data is of this size, then use this method. If the data has this dimensionality, use this method. It just takes care of it. All you do is a backslash operation. And what we are showing at our group at MIT is that a lot of these things that we thought need a lot of expertise can be easily built. I mean, we know that the AlexNet, which came out 2012, 2013, really changed the world, just like 5-6 years ago. And at that point, we thought that, wow, like you really need this human creativity to come up with this, 8-layer model back then. And after that, there have been a few other favorites like VGG and ResNet and so on. And all of us have a lot of respect for people who came up with those networks. And what we did in our group is we just said, let's create a teacher and a student network. A teacher network is creating a whole bunch of student networks to see which one, performs well. And the punchline there is that we thought, okay, we'll have to run this student-teacher networks, the student network being as good as AlexNet or VGGNet. It turns out we can start with almost any random guess, and these networks that we build are better than all the hand-tuned networks that are out there, right? So it's not like 1 in a million, 1 in a billion network that's really this magically good. Most of them are pretty good, which is good news, because even in school, when a teacher and student are working together, actually most of the students end up doing pretty well, right? Very few fail. It's the same thing with teaching networks. Yeah. No matter where you start, most of the networks actually end up doing pretty well. And that comes to this point of, will we actually need, this expertise going forward? And the last one bit is that we actually learned that we can predict how well a network will behave, not by consuming all the data, but just consuming the first 1 or 2% of data. Mm-hmm. So we could literally look at a student in their first grade and see how well they're going to do in college, effectively.
So that's a very minority report like prediction there. I'm also a little bit scared about our jobs of the people on this. I think Ramesh has very smartly said that research will still require humans.
So his job is safe.
All the applied people are going to have a tough time. I'd like comments from Andrei and Tushar on this.
Yeah, Andrei, why don't you go first, and then we'll wrap up the panel after that.
Yeah, I think if you say about future of developments of AI, there are several directions. One, I totally agree, is like after ML, right? Because how to make ML available to many businesses. Like currently, mostly technological companies or companies like which can afford having to hire like 100 PhDs to do this, get business benefits. How to enable it to smaller companies, right? And after ML will be one of solutions when you don't need to have 100 of PhDs in machine learning to make business. I believe another big uncovered area is how to make ML solutions productionalizable and working under high loads. Certainly you see TensorFlow puts a lot of efforts how to make models deployable, but many other frameworks lack of this, and it will be big direction how to make not only about neural networks, but many others, how to make your models easily deployable, easily usable in production with high loads. It's another big direction how to make AI really useful for business. And another, I think, big direction is currently missing is whole AI community and ML community working with certain set of metrics. And business metrics frequently reducible, but not directly related. Like if you take, for example, learning to rank, it was big area of using ML to search algorithms, how to make your search metrics expressible as such that they will be expressible such that machine learning model can learn them. They must have be gradientable, right? And so on. So another big area of, I believe, of AI development is to create this connection between real business metrics and metrics which are expressible as machine learning problems.
Makes sense. I will wrap up since we are kind of running out of time. In a little bit of a philosophical note, when James Ford invented steam engines in 1825, people thought that human laborers will have no place Similarly, when computers came in, we thought that it will replace human beings. I think AI is another such big phenomena, but it's not going to replace human beings completely. There will be new kind of jobs, there will be new kind of opportunities, and that's how the human history has evolved. So, guys, for those who are coming in here, we are not here to give you the message that you'll be redundant. It's just that the level of expertise in it, the level at which we'll get involved will change, and it will evolve with passage of time. That's how I would like to put it.
I think what Tushar is trying to say is, may the 4th be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.